5 ways to bring peace to your family. 3, meet their basic needs. And this really connects to the curiosity, because when you get curious and ask the questions and are like, why? Then I already touched on it. It begs that you address the underlying issue, which essentially is going to be some form of their basic needs. And we're going to explain that in a minute.
So always ask, what's the underlying cause of the underlying cause?
So when you get curious, you're like, why is my kid acting this way? Well, then what you do, rather than punishing them or disciplining them, we told you before, punishing and disciplining for us is the very, very, very last step. We have shown you guys, right, the pyramid of peace. What are we calling this pyramid?
Yeah.
75 to 80 to 90% of the pyramid should be spent on helping things go right. The very tippy top of the pyramid is fixing what's gone wrong. That includes disciplining and punishing. That's the last resort. That's the very last thing you do.
So putting that in context, like we do
little to no discipline.
With right now with 5 kids, we do almost no discipline.
And here's where disciplining comes in. Disciplining for us comes in like when we talked about when Atlas was sneaking video games. That's when disciplining comes in. Because we've taught and we've given him opportunities to prove himself in this. Then we discipline, we remove the device. He did a device fast for, I don't know, a few months. But then that's it. Then we move back into the other strategies, right? So disciplining is like a last resort. But meeting basic needs means like the things we were talking about before, the figuring out, are they hungry? Are they tired? Do they need to cuddle with me? Are they feeling neglected? Are they feeling unheard? Are they feeling misjudged? Are they feeling disrespected? I think we've shown you before the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's also another pyramid. The very bottom needs are biological and physiological, right? That means food, sleep, shelter, water. Yeah, even being thirsty can affect kids. Like you need to get a drink. Touch is a part of the biological needs.
I don't want to kill this because we go on and on and on.
Yeah.
But you're like, wait a minute, my kids have food, clothing, and shelter. What's the problem? Well, the food they're eating is garbage. Their room is an absolute disaster. They're not getting good nourishment. They're probably dehydrated, and like it's all those little things. They're just not in a good condition.
Stacking, right? All of these things that we're talking about, they stack on each other. And that's why this can feel so complicated at times, because as parents, we often want like, hey, what's the one thing I can do that's going to just solve the problems, right? What's the one parenting hack or discipline that will just solve, my kid does this, timeout, problem solved. That's what we want. But really good parenting is a lot more complex than that, because there's layers and layers and layers of issues. If your kid is eating garbage, not sleeping well, and feeling disrespected, what's the one solution that's going to fix that? There's not. There's layers of things that need to be addressed, but once you address them, then guess what? You've solved the problem for good, and now you have good behavior. Now you have exactly what you want, and it's organic and natural and real, not forced and coerced, but it takes more work and it takes more digging, and it feels a little more complicated, especially at first. Okay, so a couple more of the needs to fulfill: safety and security. If kids don't feel safe and secure, if they don't feel like they can trust you, they can respect you, that you will do what you say, that you will keep your promises, that you will take care of them, stand up for them.
But this one, even like if we're too controlling or we're manipulative, or they always feel like we're attacking them or belittling them, like that, there goes their safety.
I'm going to share this story because I think it's relevant. It popped into my mind. My 10-year-old, but this would have been a couple years ago, she was 8. She had a cavity. I think she had 2 cavities. And we were leaving. We were trying to sell our house in Georgia, and we're leaving to go backpack Europe it ended up being like 4 or 5 months. And I'm like, we need to get these cavities taken care of before we leave because I don't want to be like in Lithuania and she has a toothache and, now we're in trouble, right? Like that was my thinking, which is good thinking. So I took her to the dentist, and because they were still baby teeth, the option was just we were going to pull them out. She had the first one pulled, and even though they gave her some sort of anesthesia, like it was horrible. She just hated it. She could feel them pulling, like it just was not a pleasant experience. It was terrible. And she would not let them pull the other one. And she was crying and she was upset. And there was the dentist in there, an assistant, and they were trying to talk her into it. And she just would not have it. Finally, despite the fact that I still thought it was a good idea to have the other tooth pulled before this trip, I realized the most important thing for me to do was to respect my child's feelings and trauma and emotion and to support her. Like I just got the sense that that was the right thing for me to do. And so and Greg knows that I hate this. Like I hate being the one confronting the dentist saying, "No, we're not going to do that." Right? Like that's not my personality. But I had to do
That's
that.
my favorite thing in the world.
I know it's yours. It's not mine. And you weren't there. So I had to do it. I really did have to step out of my comfort zone in a way to do this and say, okay, it's okay, Sage. You don't want to get this done. That's fine. We'll go home. She's not going to do it. And they're just like, she needs to do it. She can't, whatever. I'm like, nope, she's not going to do it. That was a big deal because, and it's things like that. That's not the only thing, but things like that are a big deal because then your child feels like you're on their side. You're there supporting them. Now, granted, there are occasions when you have to do something. Parker, our 20-year-old, we got in a car accident when he was 6, and he had to have stitches on his head because he like got scalped practically.
Well, that's an understatement. He had to have his entire head stapled shut. Like it was a massive, massive
He has
scalping.
2 huge scars. He was 5 or 6. Greg literally had to lay on him in the hospital
On top
while
of the
doctor,
gurney.
and this was just for the anesthesia to so he couldn't feel it. But that was bad enough for him. And he just looked up at Greg.
He was bawling. He's like, "Dad, why are you doing this to me?" I'm like ready to cry. I'm like, "Buddy, I'm so sorry, but I have to force you to stay still so they can close your head. Your brain's gonna fall out."
But the point I'm trying to make is, yeah, there will be occasions when that's the case, but that should be the rarity. The rest of the time, we should trust our children and they should trust us and they should know that we have their back and we're going to stand up for them and support them and listen to them
But not baby them.
not baby them, but that you're going to be there for them and let them. Our approach has always been as much as possible, let them make their own decisions, right? And when you do that, they have more trust in themselves. Back to the self-image thing, right? They have more trust in themselves. They have more trust in you. And you have this positive reciprocal relationship. Okay.
Again, very different from 8 and 18, right?
Yeah.
When they're 8 and they're afraid, it's okay. When they're 18, you're like,
just pull out the tube.
"I'm going to push you off this cliff if you don't jump in 2 seconds."
Let me finish the story then for a second. Because this same girl, she's now 10. So she was probably 8 then. Now she's 10. She wanted to get her ears pierced. And she paid for it herself and everything. This was just like 2 weeks ago. We went and found a place to do it. They had the option of having 2 ladies do it at the same time, right? Both ears. She opted to just have one person do it. She sits there, she gets the earring put in, didn't move or anything, nothing, but then says to me, "That hurt way worse than you said it would, Mom." and then got the other one in, and afterwards was like, "It hurt so bad, I wasn't sure about doing the second one." But I didn't have to say a thing. She decided on her own how to get it done. And then she decided to have both done, even though it hurt. I think that's significant.
It's huge. Yeah.
Because she chose. I didn't have to make her do it. I didn't have to talk her into it. It was all hers. But she knew
that you wouldn't
because
force
of
her.
a previous experience.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to force her. She knew I would support whatever she decided to do. And that's where the real power is, because she's the one making the decisions. She's the one initiating. She's the one choosing. She's the one with the power, not me. And that's what we want for our kids. We want them to have the power. We don't want to be the ones controlling them. This is just one strategy I want to mention to meeting basic needs. I think that this works well with younger kids, but I feel like this also works well with older kids. I think even my 14-year-old, even my 17 and 19-year-old, this works well. And that's just, it's also connected with coming to your senses. Touch. The other day, we have this little boy that lives here. His mom works for us. He's 3. He's kind of had a bit of a traumatic life.
That's an understatement.
He does a lot of screaming. And
Okay, well, okay, hold on. That's worth pointing out for everybody right here. So he's 3 years old. He's had a rough 3 years. Okay. Dad come and go, doesn't helping. Mom just absolutely broke. Single mom, stressed out of her mind, literally working that day if she can
living in
find work to
hostels
get money to buy food for them. It's been a
and to
rough life.
pay for their night stay.
So no wonder this sweet little 3-year-old screams a lot. No wonder. Like that's his little vehicle for attention, for frustration,
For
for
getting his needs fulfilled.
confusion. I mean, that's all he knows, right? And we have to understand that, you guys. He is the perfect metaphor for all of our children. Like, wait, why is this behavior happening? Oh, there's an unmet need. There's a confusion, there's a frustration, there's a fear. And so this little guy just screams and screams and screams. And so we thought, you know what? We're going to go all hands on deck here. He's not our kid, but he's here. Like, we're going to love this kid until he just calms down and becomes a happy little 3-year-old. Today, for the first time, he ran over to me and he let me hold him. And I was just like, yes,
The very first time
big win.
he moved here, and every time he saw you for
He would just scream
weeks,
when he saw
would
me.
just scream as soon as he saw Greg.
Whatever, for a man was just like, he's screaming.
He screamed when he saw all the boys, so he's come a long way. But the other day he was down here with us and he's gotten way better, but he got upset about something and he was screaming and he was upset. And Aaliyah, our 17-year-old, she just went over and just started rubbing his back.
And so he leans into her.
Just rubbing his back.
Awesome.
And he just calmed down and he just calmed down. And he'd still kind of be like, ah. And he just calmed down. And then finally,
passed out cold.
Well, then she would stop a second and then he'd get upset and she'd rub his back some more. And then finally he got on her lap and then finally he just was cuddling. And then he just fell asleep. And then when he woke up, he slept for like over an hour. And then when he woke up,
he was just
He was just so
happy.
happy.
It was amazing. It was so cute.
I just thought, yeah, that's a perfect analogy. And I think that that's a perfect example of the approach that we've taken. And that even like, we didn't tell our daughter to do that. She just instinctively knew like, hey, this is a good approach because that's the type of approach we use. If a kid's upset, the most likely cause is that his basic needs are not being met, whether that's exhaustion or food or just a lack of security. If you meet those needs, then the behavior goes away and they calm down. So sometimes something as simple, and this works with my 7-year-old, she loves it too. Like if she's upset, like I was talking about before, I'll be like, hey, I'll give you a back rub.
She's so funny. Like
okay.
today during devotional, she reaches under the table and she's like, Dad, massage my forearm.
Yeah.
Okay. That one's hilarious.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm gonna take advantage of
Her
everything.
feel calmer and better. So, it's a good strategy. Touching, cuddling, massaging, all of that is a great approach to a child that's upset.